to my channel. So today's video I'm really excited about. This has been a video I've been thinking about making probably for the past 18 months or so, and I knew that I eventually wanted to make this video. I just didn't know when. I felt like I really wanted to kind of gather my thoughts and to really reflect before I actually talked about it. I feel like I'm kind of numb to this situation. If you saw some of my previous videos, particularly my 2023 reflection video and my weekend vlog video, I did mention how I went through a pretty bad breakup in 2022, and this is what we're going to be talking about in this video. And I did say that 2022 was a really, really good year for me, and a big reason why it was a really good year for me was because this person was in my life. And the relationship ended in a way that was just sudden and unexpected because I didn't know that all of this stuff was going on behind the scenes in his mind. So the whole time I was with him, I thought things were great, but it actually really wasn't. So we're gonna talk a little bit more about that. Just a disclaimer before I get started, there are multiple perspectives to every story. This is just my perspective. And also, I'm not gonna spend too much of this video talking about him because this video really isn't about him in a way. It's more about me and how I felt. When I look back on this relationship, I really think back to 3 moments. The first moment being the first time we ever met, the second moment being the third date that we had, and then the third moment being the second to last time that I ever saw him. So let's start from the beginning. The first time we ever met was during the summer of 2022, and I thought he was a very sweet, genuine person. We had a really good conversation. I remember we took a walk at Central Park and we kind of just sat and talked, and it was really nice to kind of have that conversation with someone. But I will say that the day that we met, I remember I had an assessment for a job that I was interviewing for because I was kind of looking for new jobs during that time. I went out and I just wanted to explore the city because it was the summer and it was warm out. I remember I bought a tea and I took a photo of it and I posted it to my Instagram stories. And then that is when he DM'd me and asked me if I was free to hang out that day. And I was like, yeah, sure. And obviously I never met him at this point, so I didn't know how this was gonna go. But we had been texting a little bit here and there. I actually matched with him on Hinge in late January of 2022, and we talked a little bit then, but then there was like kind of a lag. So we had met in January and he had added me on Instagram, but I didn't actually meet him for the first time until the summer of that year. And I remember one thing he brought up before we met up that day was that we were about the same height, and he asked me if that was okay, and I was like, yeah, of course, because me, I've never cared about a guy's height. It's never been a deal breaker for me. I know it's kind of an unpopular opinion because I think a lot of girls really care about a guy's height, but me, I've never really cared. So I remember I met up with him and we talked a little bit about what he does, a little bit about what I do, and I just really got to know him. And I remember at the end of the night when he was about to leave, I gave him a hug and we kind of just went our separate ways. And looking back, I just thought about how good things were back then. But he ended up having this whole other side of him that I never even knew about. So next up, the third date that I had with him, I remember I had just gone on a family cruise, and that entire cruise, I remember I was just thinking about him. And I remember having a thought in my mind that I could never have a bad moment with him. You know, couples that always fight, always argue, always bicker. In my mind, our relationship was never gonna be like that. And obviously it turns out I was completely wrong. After I came back 2 days later, we met up, we went to the movies, and then we got gelato. And I remember when he was about to leave, I gave him this like long hug. He got me this birthday gift, which was really sweet. Again, I thought things were great, but little did I know that would be the beginning of the end of our relationship. And I say that because I had said some things, I had done some things that I guess made him believe that I just wasn't really interested in him, which that was not what I was trying to portray at all, but that's kind of how he took it as. And I think a big reason why I was really careless with my words around him was because he never really expressed to me that that was bothering him. And so in my mind, I thought he's probably someone that doesn't read too much into things. So he doesn't really care about that stuff. He did really care, but he just wasn't a very good communicator in those situations. And so dates 4 and dates 5 came and went. And I remember the 6th date that I had with him, we went to Long Island City and we just kind of walked along the river and looked at the view of Manhattan. I feel like this was the first time where I really got to talk to him and really got to learn a lot about him heart to heart. Obviously I did talk to him a lot, but I think this particular date was when we really opened up to each other about things that we had never talked about before. I really felt like he was gonna be someone that was gonna be in my life in the long term. And after that, I remember the next day I had met up with him again because it was a holiday. And I remember we went to the mall, we walked around, and after he dropped me off at my apartment, we said goodbye. I remember I gave him a hug, and that was it. That was the last time I ever saw him, and I didn't even know. The next week, he had asked me if I wanted to hang out with him again, and I had misinterpreted his text message because he worded it in a way where I read it as he didn't want to meet up because it was raining that day. But that's not what he meant, and he was just, I guess, kind of upset with me that I didn't understand that he did want to meet up. So we did not end up meeting up that day, and I talked to him on the phone a couple times after that. There was one particular thing that happened that made me really feel like I needed to leave him, and had it not been that thing, I don't think that I would have left him, but I think I probably eventually would have, because I think his character would have eventually came out. And I remember the last time I ever heard his voice on the phone, we had a really nice conversation. We just talked about my new job, because I had just switched jobs at that time. We talked about high school and college. And that conversation really went back to who I knew him as when I first met him, and I felt really good. But this was after the thing that had happened that really made me feel like I needed to leave him. And so I remember the next night he texted me again. He asked me if I wanted to talk on the phone. And I really thought about it, and I basically said no. And we talked about everything that had gone down between us. A couple days I texted him again, and that's when that fiery and that side of him that I didn't really like really came out. And this was over text. This was not through phone call or face-to-face. So I don't think he would have said any of the things that he did say to me had it been face-to-face or over the phone. But it was some very, very upsetting text messages that he sent me. But me being a YouTuber, I do get mean comments here and there, not too much. So I'm kind of used to people saying that kind of stuff to me. I think I was not okay with it, but it hurt less, if that makes sense. And I think when things really ended between us, it took me a really long time to accept it. And I want to say it took me about 9 months to start feeling better, but I would say it didn't really start to feel okay until probably about a year after. About 6 months after things ended between us, I went on a trip to LA and Palm Springs, and I did make a video on that. I remember during that trip I was really thinking about him and how it was the first trip I was taking where he wasn't in my life. And I remember when I was in Palm Springs, I had this urge to maybe text him and see how things are going and we can rekindle things. And I remember I had typed out a text message to him and I was about to hit send, but then I just decided that I couldn't. And I think that unknown of how he would respond to that message just made me not want to open doors again. I don't know where he stands in terms of his feelings towards me. I don't know if he still feels the same way that he does when we ended things, or maybe he had reflected and regretted how he acted. I always had this thought that I might cross paths with him again, which is very possible. If you saw my previous video, I mentioned a guy that I thought I would never see again, and then one day he just suddenly sees me walking on the street and then comes up and says hi to me. So the world is very small. You may think that you'll never see someone again, but you never know when they're just gonna pop back into your life. And I always had this idea that he would sometime in my life pop back in, which it hasn't happened yet. The decision to walk away from him was one of the hardest things I ever had to do. I think my heart really wanted to stay, but everything in my mind was telling me that he just wasn't the right person, that I needed to leave. And there were a lot of times in these 18 months where I wish that I hadn't walked away. But then there are times where I think about who he really was and his character, and I think about the fact that maybe this was the right thing. Maybe things are better this way. Have you guys ever heard that quote that says people come into your lives either for a reason, a season, or a lesson? I think that he might have been someone that was only supposed to be in my life for a season, and now that we're not in each other's lives anymore, we can kind of live our lives freely and find the person that I guess we're really meant to be with. So like I kind of mentioned before, how he was when we first met and then how he was when we ended things was just a complete 180. I thought that this man was the nicest person you would ever meet. I really did. When I first met him, he was just different. He didn't want to play games. He didn't want anything casual. He was looking for something serious. That was something that I really admired about him, was that he seemed like a gentleman, but I feel like the level of pettiness that he was willing to go was just unbearable for me. I feel like I won't ever get to a point where I didn't wish I said the right thing or pushed a little harder for him to tell me what was going on. I think if we had resolved things a bit sooner, maybe that could have saved things. But then again, maybe his character was just not compatible with my character. So maybe it was supposed to end sooner or later. I don't know. I think this is just me playing hypothetical situations in my head now. I don't think he'll ever see this video, but if he does, I just want to say I'm really thankful that you came into my life. And even though things didn't really last between us, I wish you the best and hope that you're doing well. So with that being said, if you enjoyed this video, definitely give this video a thumbs up, leave me a comment letting me know if you've ever been in a situation like this. And also subscribe, turn on the bell notification if you want to see more of these kinds of videos, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye!